Tell me about the emergence and development of your feminist identity.
In 3 sentences, right?
You can take as long as you want.
Well, I think that as a child I was a feminist, although obviously I didn't know, and there were no, I certainly didn't think that way. But I felt that my mother, that my mother's life, it seemed to me, was difficult in part because she was a woman. That is, my parents, although they came separately, were immigrants from Romania. And my mother, who I think, was very interested in school, and received a scholarship to go to high school, didn't go to high school because her family decided that they needed her at home to help with the younger children and, whatever. And I think that was very hard on my mother. And the other thing is that my mother and father didn't get along very well, at least at some point. And I felt that my mother had no alternatives. That is, that she wasn't in a position to, get any money. I mean, to get a job and to sort of support herself. So, I mean, it's hard for me to say when I had these thoughts, but, I think I thought this way, sort of when I was 10, 11, 12. I mean, these were actually some things that preoccupied me. I guess because I was identified with my mother, and I was a good student academically, and I felt, gee, that it must have been hard on my mother not to be able to go to school when she wanted to. Anyway, I personally think that was the beginning of my femininity, although I would hardly have, known, I hardly have described it that way at the time. And so then obviously, I went to school, I had an early marriage, that's where the Ghent comes from, then a divorce, no children in that marriage, children in the second marriage. Anyway, and I was certainly determined to make some sort of independent life for myself. I felt, that I didn't want to put myself in my mother's position. It's not that I really sat and thought about it. I didn't. But, there were things I wanted to do, and I, liked scholarly work, so to speak. And I was, in a sense, I feel fortunate to be able to go to graduate school and all that sort of thing, and I really enjoyed what I did. And then I was trying to think of, along came the women's movement, but what am I really trying to, what am I really referring to there? I can't think of some individual thing that I read or that was happening. But clearly, women were writing things and doing things that hadn't happened before, and that I felt very sympathetic with and responsive to and excited by. So that was, all really terrific. And it changed my the way we ran the house, actually, because let me see about that. Well, in the early 60s, one child was born in 61 and one in 64. At any rate, my husband, who was also a psychologist, well, he was really a psycholinguist, but he was a psychologist, but that was his interest, we, you know, he was a very, I mean, he was a very fair person. On the other hand, and I knew I could count on that, on the other hand, he wasn't the least bit interested in some of the demands that I was making on how we ran the house. I mean, you know, who made dinner, or who cleaned up, or who did whatever there was to be done in the house. And of course, we finessed many of these problems by hiring household help. I mean, I think, you know, that's one way of, but on the other hand, we did make some change. I mean, we agreed to, you know, have a sort of equal dinner making. My husband is able to cook. I mean, and he, well, I don't know whether he liked to cook. He liked to cook when it was convenient for him to cook. And I said, well, I mean, tough, you know. You have to eat every day. I mean, so it isn't just when, you know, you feel like cooking. So, you know, we worked out, with, you know, with some trial and tribulation, some of these things. I mean, including, you know, getting the house cleaned. It's true we hired somebody who came in one day a week. I don't know if you really want this kind of detail, do you?
Anything that you want to give.
Well, I don't know whether I did, but at any rate, what the hell. It was, we were living in Santa Barbara at the time, and I remember that, you know, we had agreements about who was going to clean up or how we were going to sort of trade off. And, you know, Marty said, well, you know, I don't care. I don't really. I don't want to do this. And so I said, well, you know, I don't want to do it either. At any rate, we had a little period of about a year or 18 months, maybe, when the house was really rather messy, but it couldn't get too messy because somebody came in once a week and, you know, sort of cleaned up and so on. And we didn't have somebody more than that. Well, partly money, and I'm not entirely sure. Mostly financial, I think. At any rate, because we had lots of expenses when you have young children. And so on. Anyway, and I was upset some of the time because I felt if somebody comes in and sees a messy house, I'm the one who's going to be blamed, you know, and it bothered me. But anyway, what happened is that I basically got over being bothered, decided, hey, look, you know. And the other thing is that Marty was really a fairly tidy person. And so he decided that he couldn't stand. So, you know, we came to a new accommodation, and that was great. And really, it was a struggle. And I don't know. I mean, people work these things out. And I mean, there are sort of interesting consequences in the sense that our children learned to cook earlier than I would have ever introduced them to it. But once our son got to be 12, Martin said, hey, look, you know, if I have to make dinner with it's mine, you know, Jonathan can learn to cook too. And, you know, actually, I mean, I was impressed because I would never have done it at that age. I would have waited a couple of years. But, you know, he was quite right. Jonathan was very interested in food, and he needed some tuition, but he learned to cook, you know, to make dinner once a week. And I think that was really good for him and good for us. And I was struck by the fact that I wouldn't have made that demand. He did, and he was right. I mean, it worked out well, and then our daughter came in when she was 12. Anyway, well, I'm not sure whether this is all about how I became a feminist, but it is, actually. It is. So. Yeah. It's really how you kind of live your daily life, or your life with people, with your family, I mean, people with whom